We've been in the middle of a class called The Bait of Satan, and I just want to kind of recap everybody on where we are right now in this class. So this word, bait, it comes from the word offense, and it's the idea that people get offended by someone else, and that is one of the devil's traps for our lives. And last week, we looked in depth at the life of Joseph, and how he had every right to be offended by his brothers who sold him into slavery and took away his rights as a rightful heir of his father because he had a vision from God. And then he also had to deal with offense and being offended with God. And today, we're going to look at the life of someone else, the life of King David. And some of you are familiar with David's life, and others of you are not. Hopefully, by the end of this, you're very familiar. We'll kind of walk through what some of this looks like. Now, in 1 Samuel 24:11, there in your notes, you can follow along with me. I'd encourage you to get a set if you don't have a set, because we've got all the scriptures we'll be looking at today. Samuel tells King Saul, "Look, my father, at what I have in my hand. It's a piece of the hem of your robe. I cut it off, but I didn't kill you. This proves that I'm not trying to harm you and that I've not sinned against you, even though you have been hunting to kill me." Now, I'm going to give you some background, a lot of background before we get to this verse, but I want you to see something very important. David calls Saul his father, but Saul was not David's actual father. We'll look at this, and I'll break down all the relationships and make sure you clearly understand all this, but I just want you to take note of that, and that's why the lesson is called My Father, because twice in this passage in 1 Samuel 24, David calls Saul his father. Now, I want to kind of give you an overview and a picture so that you understand the life of King David and the life of Saul. King David might be one of the most famous followers of God of all time. Many of you know the Star of David, which is a symbol of Judaism on the flag of Israel. Many of you have heard of David. He wrote the 23rd Psalm. He also killed Goliath, which is what most people know King David as. When he was just a young man, he killed a giant with a rock. That's one of the stories that I'll briefly mention. But there's a lot of things going on in David's life that I want you to understand. Now, in order to understand David, his other significance is that David is the lineage where Jesus comes from. And what you need to understand about David is that David was anointed to be king by a man named Samuel. And Samuel was the high priest at the time. The first king that Samuel anointed was a man named Saul. Saul became the first king of Israel. You see, God never intended for the people of Israel to have a king. He intended for him to always be their king. And that is the challenge every one of us still faces in life today. Is God really the king of our life, or is something else the king? For some people, money is their king. For some people, their career is their king. For some people, having a baby is their king. For some people, getting married is their king. For some people, no longer being married is their king. People have all kinds of different things they're chasing after. It's the thing that you think, man, if I just had this, then I'd be set, then I'd be happy, then I'd be taken care of. It's the thing you chase and prioritize over everything else. I was reading a book earlier today, and it was talking about the word priorities. And it was saying how for the first couple of thousand years that the word priority was around, it was not a plural word. It was just singular, priority. There is no such thing as priorities, because a priority is something that comes prior to something else. That's why it's a priority. There can only be one of them. If you've got 5 priorities, then that tells you you have no priorities, right? You're just chasing 1,000 different things. And the idea here is that every one of us has to decide, do we want to make God the priority of our life, where we spend our time, our energy, our affection? Do we want God to be king, or do we want something else to be king? You know, Saints season is about to kick off. First game, preseason games tomorrow night, right? For a lot of people in this city, Saints are king, right? That's what they talk about, what they spend their energy on. Now, are the Saints a good king? No, they're not. Why? Let's say they start 0-4. What happens? Yeah, they are unfaithful, very, very unreliable, untrustworthy. And there's two types of Saints fans. You know this, right? There's the one type who's like, this is the year. This is the year. I feel it. Our offense, better than ever. Breeze has still got it. We sewed the defense up, Super Bowl bound. How many of you know who I'm talking about? Yeah? Now there's another kind of Saints fan. There's only two kinds. What's the other kind of Saints fan? We gonna suck again. I know it. It's just another year. It's like, that's just the way it is, right? It doesn't matter what we do. You got those two types. The reality is that all kinds of things can be the king in our life. And the people of Israel began noticing that all the other peoples had kings, but they didn't have a king. So they said, we want a king. And God said, no, you really don't want a king, because all the king is going to do is make the men in your community his soldiers, and the women work for him or be his wives. You really don't want a king. They said, no, we understand, but we really want a king. And so they began begging, and finally God said, fine, you want a king? I'll give you a king. And the first king of Israel was a man named Saul. And Saul started out good. He was anointed to be king, and Samuel gave him these instructions, these things he was supposed to do. But the only problem is that Saul had this little attitude with God where basically he would say, thanks God, I appreciate the hookup. I can take it from here. Right? So like he would pray and he would need something and God would take care of it. And then he would say, all right, God, I'll come back, see you next time I got a problem. I got it from here. He didn't really want to rely on God. He didn't really want God to be his king. He just wanted God to bail him out when he had a problem. And this didn't work real well for him. He wasn't willing to follow instructions and follow guidelines. And so God actually said, you know what, Saul, I've rejected you as king, and I've picked someone else who's a man after my own heart. And that was David. And David knew how to wait on the Lord. He knew how to trust in the Lord. He was just a shepherd at the time. Matter of fact, when Samuel went to find the next king, God just told him, you need to go to the house of a man named Jesse. And David was Jesse's son. He was Jesse's youngest son, but he actually had a bunch of sons. And when his first son came out, that first son looked like a king. He was tall, he was strong, he spoke well, he was eloquent, he handled himself well. He looked like he should be in charge. And Samuel said, I know, that's the one. And God told him, no, you make the mistake of judging the outward appearance of people. I look at people's hearts. He's not got the right heart. And they went all the way down the line. Is this him? Is this him? Is this him? No. And finally, Samuel, out of frustration, said, do you have any more sons? He said, well, I got the run of the litter. I got the last one I got. He's out working in the fields as a shepherd. I'll go get him if you want. And when David came up, Samuel said, that's the one. That's the next king. That's the one that's supposed to be king. And he anointed him to be king of Israel. Now, as soon as this happens, the very next thing that takes place, he's anointed to be king, is that someone who works for King Saul notices that he starts having this problem where he's getting tormented by a demon. And he's going crazy. He looked like a psycho. He's just going nuts. He's just tormented. And they tried all kinds of things to try to calm him down, but nothing would work. And finally, somebody said, well, maybe if we got some good music, that would calm him down. And one person in the court said, well, I know of this guy. His day job is he's a shepherd, but I hear he can play the harp pretty good. Maybe we should get him. And that was David. And so they bring David in, and David's right next to the king. The king goes bananas, David plays the harp, and the king calms down. And I know David had to be thinking, man, I'm one step away from king. I'm next to the king's nuts, I'm the only one that can calm him down. He's got a demon, and I can settle the demon. People are going to notice this, people are going to recognize this. I'm one step away from being king. The only problem is David didn't actually become king for another 23 years. There were some things that happened before he would move to be king. It's just a little bit at a time. He was actually sent back home after that. Went back working as a shepherd. And then one day, his brothers were all in the army. They were in the military. And the army of Israel was fighting against the Philistines. And there was a giant named Goliath. And Goliath basically came out and he said, look, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to challenge you one-on-one. You send out your best man. If your best man beats me, we'll go away. But if I beat your best man, then we rule you. And there was kind of this standoff. And nobody wanted to go fight Goliath. Everybody's like, nah, I don't really want to fight him. I mean, you've had this experience before. Fellas, you'll understand this. Ladies, you won't get this. But every fella knows there's just certain people you ain't trying to mess with, right? You know, I just went to an event. I was in Austin. This guy came up and he was like 6'4", 380. And I was like, yeah, I'm not messing with him. I don't care what goes down. You know, this ain't happening. And that's kind of what Goliath was. Nobody was messing with him. Nobody was fooling with him. And David showed up just to bring some sandwiches to his brothers, just to bring some refreshments, just to bring some food. He said, hey, I just want to show up, help my brothers out. And when he got there, he's like, what's the deal with everybody being panicked and Goliath is over there? And what's going on? They said, well, he's challenged this battle. And King Saul has actually said that if anybody goes and fights Goliath and wins, you can marry one of his daughters. I mean, it's a good deal. You get to marry a princess, you know? And so David says, man, sounds like my kind of hustle. Sign me up. And so he goes out and he just has faith and trust in the Lord. And he says, you know what? You're blaspheming God. God's going to have my back. And he picks up a sling with a rock. He hits Goliath in the head. He actually takes Goliath's sword, chops off his own head. And he says, yeah, now what y'all want to do? And, you know, when the big guy goes out and he gets beat, everybody panics. They start running. They chase him down. They kill him. It's a good move. And then David gets to marry Saul. So literally, Saul becomes his, he becomes his son-in-law. Saul becomes his father-in-law, right? So this is, in essence, a father to him. This is a father figure to him. This is his actual father-in-law. Now, some of y'all think you have problems with your in-laws. But Saul eventually tries to actually kill David. Not like, oh, I'm going to kill you. No, like throws a spear at him, literally tries to kill him, and it becomes a real big problem. Not only does David marry Saul's daughter, the king's daughter, the princess, he actually becomes best friends with the king's son, Jonathan. They become real tight. They make a covenant relationship. We say, look, man, we're gonna be brothers until the end of this thing. And Jonathan actually tells David, man, you take all the king's garments. You take the sash and the sword and everything that's needed to be king. You're more qualified for this than me. I mean, this is close. David is literally living in Saul's house. He's literally living there with him. And things are going well. He's eating the king's food. This is a good life for him. It's an upgrade. He's been working out as a shepherd in the field. I mean, it's like he inherited all these things. He's got servants. He's got people waiting on him. No need for food. I mean, you understand this, right? I mean, how many of you would enjoy if you didn't have to cook and you didn't have to wash the dishes and you didn't have to clean up after yourself and you didn't have to go to the grocery? Did I just make your life easy? I mean, this is David's life, right? This is the good life. There was just one problem. David almost began doing too well. Everybody started to see his success and what was happening. Let's read this. 1 Samuel 18, verses 1 through 15. After David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son, and there was an immediate bond between them. For Jonathan loved David from the day that Saul kept David with him and then wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made a pact with David because he loved him, just like he loved himself. And Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. This was a symbol of him saying, okay, you wear the prince's clothes. You're almost like the next king. You should be the next king. It was like Jonathan supporting what David wanted to be. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war, an appointment that was welcomed by the people and Saul's officers alike. When the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed the Philistine, women from all the towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul, and they sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals, and this was their song. I want you to pay attention to the song. Saul has killed his thousands, and David has killed his 10,000s. Now, how many of you recognize this is going to be a problem? Right? This is going to be a little issue. This made Saul very angry. Now, imagine this, right? You the king. You show up back home, and all the women are waiting for you. And they say, oh, king, you're so amazing. Because you killed thousands. But that David, he killed tens of thousands. Now, Saul got offended at this statement. That's what happened. Saul got offended. Now, Saul, if he was smart, he would have said, hey, look, it's me and David, the 11,000 club. We done killed 11,000. But no, he wasn't doing that, right? He got very angry. He got upset. What's this? He said, they credit David with 10,000s and me with only thousands. Next, they'll be making him their king. So from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. David was playing the harp as he did each day, but Saul had a spear in his hand, and suddenly he hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall, but David escaped him twice. This is his son-in-law. He's married to his daughter, best friends with his son. The harp that used to be able to calm that evil spirit, now he wanted to kill him. Tried to do it twice. Saul was then afraid of David, for the Lord was with David and had turned him away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent him away and appointed him commander over 1,000 men, and David faithfully led his troops in battle. David continued to succeed in everything he did, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul recognized this, he became even more afraid, because all Israel and Judah loved David because he was so successful at leading the troops in the battle. So everything Saul tries to do to be a problem for David, David just successful again. Successful again. It reaches the point where it gets a little more hairy and a little more hectic and a little more tense. And finally, David's like, man, I can't take this guy anymore. He's going to kill me. And he ends up running for his life. He flees, and he ends up just kind of wandering around in the wilderness. He's got 300 men with him. And in the Bible, it literally says that the people who went with him were all the people who were bitter and had bad attitudes and were broke. Now, how many of you know if you're the leader of a group of people and everybody is bitter and has bad attitudes and are broke, you got a problem, right? These are the 300 people you never want to be with. And now he's living in caves and he's in the wilderness and he's doing all these things that he doesn't want to do. Not only that, now Saul is pursuing David, trying to kill him. He's literally chasing after him. He's literally seeking to see what he can do to find him and to kill him. He wants to take him out. He wants to end his life. He feels so threatened by him and what he's doing. Now, here's what I want you to realize at this moment. Put yourself in David's shoes. What has David done wrong? Nothing. Why is the king trying to kill him? So was that his problem? No. Now, you imagine this, right? You live in the lap of luxury. You're living in the king's palace. You don't have to cook your food. You don't have to wash your dishes. You don't have to shop for groceries. You don't have to worry about where everything's coming from. You don't have to take care of nothing. I mean, you realize how many marriage problems you would have if somebody did all the laundry and cooked all the food and washed all the dishes and did all the clothes and took care. I mean, if you got marriage problems then, there's just something wrong with you, right? I mean, literally, nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. So here's David doing everything right, and he ends up in this spot now. Now he's living in the wilderness. He's camping. Anybody here been camping? Anybody here, you like to go camping? Yeah, there's something wrong with y'all. I just want y'all to know that. You know, I'm just the kind of camper I am. I'm the camper that shows up with a window unit and a generator. Like, I'm ready to camp now. Like, I need an actual camper. You know? My wife, that's what my wife says. My wife says if there's no air conditioning, that's a third world country. It don't matter where it is. It don't matter where. It's going to be West Wego if there's no AC. It's third world over there. You know? Here he is. Now he's in the wilderness. No servants. What's he eating in the wilderness? Yeah, whatever he can get, right? Frogs. You know, Nutra. They eat Nutra rats out there. You know, it's like the old Robin. It's like the animals on the little stick rotating around. And you're like, what is that? Just don't worry about it. You just want to eat it. It looks like a rat.
It tastes like chicken.
Yeah, it tastes like chicken. That's it, Kenny. Don't worry about it. Just eat it. Here's some ketchup. You know, and then who's he with? Who's he with? All the bitter people. You ever been around bitter people? Right? Is that fun? Broke people. Anybody like being around broke people? I mean, I'm not talking about like they got broke once. I'm talking about like they professionals at being broke. Like I'm talking about like the people that like they get a tax return and they already broke the next week. That's what I mean. I'm talking about like, you know, like they can mess up more money than you ever seen. Right? Yeah, bitter, broke, and bad attitudes. I mean, does it get in, you know, you eating Nutri-Rat, and what are you thinking the whole time? I should have been in the king's palace. Why did I do things the right way? Why did I follow God? I should have never killed. I mean, David's life as a shepherd was better than his life in the wilderness. He had to be thinking, I should have just stayed tending these sheep. I shouldn't have fought this war. I shouldn't have killed this giant. I shouldn't have done any of these things that I knew God was leading me to do because it just is a problem. And Saul's after him. So he's got to keep fleeing. He's got to keep fleeing. Literally, his life is on the line. And then finally, Saul really starts to lose it. He ends up in a little town called Nob, and the people there actually helped David. And when he found out about this, he went ballistic. He killed 78 of their priests, all the men, all the women, all the children, all the animals, guinea pigs, everything. He took everybody out. And the great irony was the reason he got rejected by God in the first place is because that's what he was supposed to do to the enemies of God, the Amalekites, and he wasn't willing to do it. Now for his own kingdom and for his own causes, he was willing to do this all of a sudden. Because he was desperate. He was jealous. He had all the wrong guidance and direction. And then he actually chases David to a place called En-Gedi. And this way it gets real interesting. David's in a cave, the cave of Adullam. That was the person who owned the cave. And he's in there and he's with his guys. And Saul's looking for him and he can't find him. And Saul actually goes into the cave to go use the bathroom. Not little potty, big potty. Right? And you got to remember back in them days, they wearing robes. You got to get undressed. You know, you got to take all your clothes off. And you got to do it. I mean, y'all know how to use the bathroom if you're out in the wilderness, right? You take your hands and you cup them behind your knees like this, and that's your seat, right? That's how you got to do it. Y'all didn't know that? See, I'm teaching you something at church. You don't get this everywhere. Right? So he goes to go, and you know, right, when you go in big potty, that's a vulnerable position, right? And so David's in the cave, hiding right behind where he's going to the bathroom. Now, he's a king, right? He's got security, he's got bodyguards, but you know, when you go big potty, nobody's going with you, right? I mean, anybody here, you take somebody with you? Okay, just checking, right? So he goes, he's by himself. This is the opportunity. David can sneak up, kill him. Now, did David have the right to kill him? Did he have reason to kill him? Yes. I mean, this guy's after him. He won't leave him alone. What did he do wrong? What has David done wrong? Nothing. So he sneaks up behind him, and instead of taking him out, he says, you know what? I'm just going to cut a piece of his robe off. So he cuts a piece of his robe off. And then when Saul goes outside, David comes out and he goes, hey, what's up? You looking for me? I want you to see I'm not after you. I'm not trying to take you out. You don't need to be jealous of me. Actually, I cut a piece of your robe off just now because I could have killed you. But I want you to realize that's not what I'm after. This is actually the passage that we started with. 1 Samuel 24. After Saul returned from fighting the Philistines, he was told that David had gone into the wilderness of En-Gedi. So Saul chose 3,000 elite troops from all of Israel and went to search for David and his men near the rocks of the wild goats. At the place where the road passes some sheepfolds, Saul went into a cave to relieve himself. That's the biblical way of saying big potty, just so you know. But as it happened, David and his men were hiding further back in that very cave. Now's your opportunity, David's men whispered to him. Today the Lord is telling you, I will certainly put your enemy into your power to do as you wish. So David crept forward and cut a piece of the hem of Saul's robe. But then David's conscience began bothering him because he had cut Saul's robe. He said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do this to my Lord the king. I shouldn't attack the Lord's anointed one, for the Lord himself has chosen him. So David restrained his men and did not let them kill Saul. After Saul had left the cave and gone his way, David came out and shouted after him, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked around, David bowed low before him. Then he shouted to Saul, "Why did you listen to the people who say, 'I'm trying to harm you'? This very day you can see with your own eyes it isn't true. For the Lord placed you at my mercy back there in the cave. Some of my men told me to kill you, but I spared you, for I said, 'I'll never harm the king. He's the Lord's anointed one.' Look, my father, at what I have in my hand. It's a piece of the hem of your robe. I cut it off, but I didn't kill you. This proves I'm not trying to harm you, and I have not sinned against you, even though you have been hunting me to kill me." So this is very interesting, right? Now, this is what I want you to see. Did David have a reason to be offended by Saul? Yes. Did David have a reason to be offended by God? I think he did. God, I'm serving you, I'm living for you, I'm doing all the right things, and this is where I end up. How's this fair to me? Now, I'm showing you these patterns. You're not the first person who's ever been offended in life. You know, I'm going to take you back to week 1. The key of this whole process is being willing to admit when you've been offended. A lot of times we think we're angry, we think we're frustrated, but what are we really? We're really offended. This happens in marriages. Somebody says something to you and you get offended. Right? You know, me and my wife, we went through this very early on in our marriage. You know, my wife would come to me and she'd say, "Hey, can you take the trash out?" No problem. As soon as this hits commercial, I'll get it. Wife goes to bed. Commercial comes, what do? I forgot. Am I the first one to do this? No. Right? So she wakes up the next morning, goes to work, I go to work. I come home, it's been a long day. She gets home earlier than me, about 30 minutes. When she gets home, she walks in the door. What's the first thing she sees? Trash. Now, what's she thinking? Yeah, you don't love me, right? You don't listen to me. You don't pay attention when I'm talking. You know, you don't do nothing I ask you to do, right? So she's stewing on this for 30 minutes, right? That's all she's thinking about. She takes the trash out. And you know how that works, right? When she goes to take it out, because she's mad, not a bottom busted, it's dripping grease all over the house. Now she got to mop that up. She's even more mad, right? So then I walk in the door. Long day at work. I'm tired. I feel like resting and relaxing. I walk in. As soon as I open the door, what's she say? Does she say, "Hey, baby, how was your day?" No, what happens? Come on, I'm not the only one that's been married before. I know, right? Y'all, this is my story. This is everybody's story, right? So I walk in, and what she say? "Why you didn't take the trash out?" Now, I already done had a hard day. I'm trying to rest and relax. I walk in. I'm not trying. Now, what happened, right? What happened? Now, when she got home and she saw the trash, what was she? She was offended. She was offended. And because she was offended and she didn't respond to it in the best way, when I walked in the door and she said to me, "Why you didn't take the trash out?" How did I feel? Offended. So now you got two offended people. And what do offended people like to do? Get revenge. Yeah. I'm going to show you what's up. Now you start, and then all of a sudden the fight gets ugly, right? Then now you talking about your mama, how your daddy, you just like your daddy, you like your mama. Well, you know, at least my mama knew how to cook. Your mama don't even know how to cook, and it's like, well, how we got? It's just trash. This how this goes down, okay? And it all started with offense, and you got to be able to call it out. So here's David. He's offended. And when you offended, he's sitting there thinking. His plot was he was going to kill him. That's why it says when he got just a piece of the robe, he said he felt convicted. Like, man, this ain't right. This ain't what I should be doing. He's still a king. I should still be honoring him. I should still respect his position at least, even if I don't respect the person. And he says when he comes out, "Look, man, you my father. Why are you doing this to me?" And in this story, Saul realizes, man, what am I doing? He's not trying to kill me. He could have killed me just now. I need to change my approach. And so Saul ends up saying, I'm not going to mess with you. Now here's the problem. just like we have physical fathers, in the same way, we have spiritual fathers and spiritual mothers, spiritual parents, people who are spiritual influences in our lives. And far too often, what's a parent supposed to do to a child? What's a parent's job? Anybody want to guess? Guide, discipline, raise, love. Right? Let me make it real simple. It's real simple. You're supposed to protect them, correct? Like it's your job to protect your kids, right? I mean, let's say you walked into the grocery store and you had a 10-year-old son and he was ahead of you, and when you walked in, some guy slapped your kid in the face. Are you going to be like, yeah, oh well? Or is that going to be a problem for you? Right? Now, the reality is if it was another kid, you might think, man, I wonder what just happened. But it's not going to bother you as much. It's your kid, right? When it's your child, you feel differently about it, right? Because you're supposed to protect your kids. You feel that. You know that. If somebody hurts your kids, you understand that, right? I mean, sometimes it's been like when your children gets in a fight. There's some people that's like, well, I'm going up to the school and we're going to have a fight. That happens. People want to protect their kids. It's a natural instinct. And spiritual parents are supposed to do what to their spiritual children? Protect them. Not only do you protect them, but you're supposed to nurture them. Now, nurture them means to grow them. Now, how do you grow your children? Well, you grow them physically. How do you do that? You feed them, right? How many of you know you're supposed to feed your kids, right? Matter of fact, this is one of the biggest challenges of parenting, right? Is getting your kids to eat and sleep. Right? School just started this week. The parents that have small kids, it's like, you're giving your kids Benadryl. Like, you're going to go to sleep. Like, this is going down. The schedule's changing. And this is what's amazing. When you become an adult, what's the two things you just want to do? Eat and sleep, right? Right? How much of your time do you spend trying to stop eating and to stop sleeping? Like, I don't feel like waking up right now. Right? But when you're raising kids, that's what it's hard to get them to. That's nurturing. Why do they need to sleep? They grow. Not only do they grow physically, but they grow emotionally and spiritually. Like if your child has anxiety, you need to help them grow through that. Or if they have a fear, right? Like if your kid wakes up in the middle of the night and says, I had a bad dream. Do you just tell, oh, well, get over it and I get out of my room? No, you try to nurture them, right? Like, let me go through this. What was it? Let's talk about it. What can we do? How can we handle this situation? You got to nurture them. You got to grow them. That's your job. And spiritual parents are no different. See, Saul was supposed to be protecting and nurturing his spiritual son, David. David wanted Saul to be a father to him. But instead of providing for him, what was he? Jealous. Can you imagine a father being jealous of their son? It happens. You know when it happens a lot? In step families. Stepdad's jealous of the stepson. Stepmom's jealous of the stepson, stepdaughter. Kids are sharp too. They'll put jealousy in the mix. I've seen kids, 14, 15, say to their mama or their real mom and their real dad about their stepmom and stepdad, well, you need to pick me or them. That's what they're doing, right? They like, hey, I'm going to put this right up in the mix. Because they understand the power that this has. Look, here's the reality. The reality is that spiritual parents are supposed to provide nurturing and caring compassion to spiritual children. That's what a pastor is. That's my job. My job is to be a shepherd, a protector, and a nurturer. It's supposed to feed and protect and lead. But unfortunately, a lot of people have been offended by pastors. They've been hurt by people who are supposed to be spiritual fathers or spiritual mothers. Or that some of you know somebody that poured into your life and discipled you and helped you grow, and then later on down the road, out of jealousy or whatever it was, they turned their back on you, threw you under a bus, and offended you. What do? The prophet Malachi talks about this. There's a verse that's in your notes right there. It talks about how there's going to come a day when God's going to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children and the hearts of the children back to the fathers. This is something that is legit and real. What's crazy in this story is that you got to understand what God's trying to show us is that when there's vision for God, that vision is supposed to serve the people of God. It's not the people who serve the vision of some leader or some pastor or some person. A lot of times there's offense that comes that way that you got to deal with. What's crazy is that after David pleads his case to Saul Saul says, you're right. I'm going to go home. I'm going to stop chasing after you. When Saul gets back, he ends up changing his mind, and he goes after David to try to kill him again. He tries to kill him again. And this time, he's got an army of 3,000 men chasing David, and David's with a guy named Abishai. And when they go out, God actually had put all the people of the camp to sleep. And they just walking through the camp, everybody's sleeping. They walk right up to King Saul. And Abishai says, hey, you don't even worry about it. Why don't you just let me kill King Saul? I'll just kill him for you. I promise you I won't even need 2 blows. I'm going to give him that Mike Tyson uppercut. I'm going to end his life 1 blow. He's sleeping. Obviously, God set this up. This is a miracle. God paved the way. And you know what David says? Nope. We don't need to do it. That's not what we need to do. He says, you know what we need to do? We need to leave the vengeance up to the Lord. 1 Samuel 26, 9-11. No, David said, don't kill him. He's talking to Abishai. For who can remain innocent after attacking the Lord's anointed one? Surely the Lord will strike Saul down someday, or he'll die of old age or in battle. The Lord forbid that I should kill the one whom he has anointed, but take his spear and that jug of water beside his head, then let's get out of here. Brother was thirsty, you know what I mean? Get the spear and get that bottle of Dasani so we can get up out of here. Now, here's the thing. The big point at the end of this is, how do you deal with offense? Like, are you supposed to call people out? David didn't feel the need to expose King Saul or to have King Saul removed from office. He didn't feel the need to take him down. He didn't feel the need to take him out. He said, you know what? Let's just leave that up to the Lord. And the first principle you need to understand, really, when it talks about overcoming offense, because this is what people do. They say, no, I can't let this go. Because if I let this go, then they're never going to get what they deserve. They're never going to get what's coming to them. If I let this go, how are they ever going to learn? How are they going to know? I can't just walk away from it. Yeah, you can. If you understand that vengeance does not belong to you. What does it mean to avenge something? It means to make it right. It's not your job to make things right. You can't make everything right in the world, no matter how hard you try. You know, like people say, okay, we're going to end drug addiction. No, you're not. You can't end drug addiction. You know why? You know why? Because not everybody wants to get clean. Guy called me today. Hey, man, I got this friend. I need you to help him. What should I do? I said, okay, does he want help or do you want him to have help? That's a big difference. Because if you want him to have help, I can't help him, and neither can you. But if he wants help, I'd be glad to help him. Here's my number. I'm willing to help anybody that wants help. The problem is most people that say they want help, they don't want help. You know what they want? They want you to listen to them. They just need they just need a shoulder to cry on. When somebody needs a shoulder, you know what you give them? A shoulder. And nothing more than that. Because anything more than that, it's not going nowhere. You realize the worst advice in the world is unsolicited advice. Hey, I know you didn't ask me, but let me tell you what I think. That conversation's never ended well. It has a 0% effectiveness rate. Right? It's like the statement, I don't mean to be offensive. Just don't say anything after that part, right? Like that has never worked, ever. Because whatever they about to say is going to be offensive. Right? Here's the reality. You're going to be offended this week by somebody. Maybe tonight. Maybe you got offended earlier. Might be in traffic. I'm going to Walmart when I leave here to go buy some milk. I'm probably going to get offended there. I usually get offended at every trip to Walmart. I can tell you just about where it's going to happen. Self-checkout. It's going to happen at the self-checkout. I don't know exactly what's going to go down, but something's going to go down at the self-checkout, and I'm going to walk away offended. Like, it offends me that people go through the self-checkout and they don't know how to self-checkout. That's offensive to me. She said, got to learn some way. I know. I know you do. I know you do. But they hiring though. You know, you can always get a job there, learn the checkout system, and then self-checkout. You know, it's offensive to me that they got 36 registers and 2 people are working. Like, even at Christmas, all the registers ain't open. Why we did this? We wasted this space. Like, every grocery store in the history of the earth was built with too many registers. Like, just to give you hope that one day there's going to be people working there. It's not happening. I'm just telling you, I'm going to be offended today. And when I get offended, I got to think, you know what? It's not my job to right all these wrongs. Whose job is it? Lord, can I tell you what your job is? It's to right this wrong. Because that's the only thing I ain't in control of. And the only way you right this wrong is to take everything that a person does that's offensive to you and say, all right, the Lord's going to have to get what's coming to them. That's the Lord's job, to give them vengeance. The Lord will deal with them however he sees fit to deal with them. It's not my job to make it right. It's not my responsibility. It's not my goal. I see this all the time. You know, we had the story of the Saints player that was shot and killed uptown with a little car accident, right? Okay, that's not supposed to end there. A fender bender ain't supposed to end in murder. There ain't no reason for that ever to happen in the history of the world. How's it get there? Offense. Man, you offended me because you hit me and drove off. Well, you offended me because you plied the back of my car. Well, you offended me because you threatened me. Well, you offended me because you pulled a gun out. And all of a sudden, offense. Oh, I'm going to make this right. I'm about to show you what's up. I'm going to show you what you need. I'm going to teach you the lesson. Now, who learned the lesson? Nobody learned the lesson. And you know who's not going to learn the lesson? The children of those men. Because now you got one set of kids that has no father because he's deceased, and another set of kids that has no father because he's in jail. Vengeance does not work out. It doesn't work out. And the whole time you're waiting to get vengeance, guess what you are? Bitter. Bitter. And you know how you feel when you're bitter? Yeah. Is it joyful? Does anybody wake up, man, I feel so good today because I'm so bitter. Right? You know what they call the face people make when they drink cheap beer? Bitter beer face. That's not a good face. Right? That's not what you after. Okay? That's what happens. What happens to people is when you get bitter, that bitterness ends up controlling your life, and you think in some kind of way you're going to get vengeance. And guess what's crazy? After you get the vengeance, how you feel? Yeah, it doesn't do anything for you. I'm not going to say you feel worse, but you certainly don't feel better. You don't think, glad I got that out of my system. Straight down. The vengeance doesn't solve the burden. What solves the burden is releasing the burden to God and saying, okay, God, I'll let you make things right. Can I just tell you this was going to happen, right? Let's say this is my mama. She's offended me before in my life. But it's okay because I've offended her too. Okay? Let's say she offends me. Let's say she offends me. And I decide I'm just going to release that to the Lord. All right, Father, you got to deal with my mama because I ain't going to deal with her. Now, the right way to do that is I still maintain relationship with her. I still love her. I still honor her. I still respect her. That's what it means to release it to the Lord. If I say, all right, Lord, I'm releasing it to you, and then when she calls, I ain't talking to her. I didn't really release it. You see what I'm saying? I still got the bitterness in my heart. I'm still carrying the burden. I'm just not dealing with it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really releasing this to the Lord. All right, Father, I'm not going to hold that against him. You got what I'm saying? So here's what I want us to do. We're going to just pray real quick, not long. And I want you to pray with me out loud. Even if you don't pray a lot, that's okay. Just pray out loud with me. I want you to say, Dear Lord Jesus, show me the people that I'm holding bitterness towards. Reveal it to me. And show me I need to release it to you. Let me be reminded that vengeance is your responsibility. Keeping my heart pure is mine. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. All right. We good.